Hi. I'm Jung In. I'm going to talk about my the way I use movement for my collaborative sound competition. I'm going to talk about myself really briefly. I'm a sound artist and a researcher, and now I work as a lecturer in creative computing at Abertay University in Dundee in Scotland. And I really appreciate your opening talk, Michaela, about the cliche, because I feel like I'm the walking cliche, like who's ticking all the boxes, female, Asian, all that kind of things, and also who suffers from imposter syndrome. So thank you, Dover. So I feel much better to be here now. So that's me. So the first time I started creating sound work was still when I was a student. I studied film sound, but then I realized there's a whole lot of other ways to create sound work. So Sonic Bella was my very first sound installation. I played with Arduino and and sensors and stuff. So basically, there's a light sensor attached underneath of the umbrella, and when someone walks underneath the umbrella, it detects a shadow and it played sound, my sound materials. And later on, oh, there's no sound. Is there a sound? No. Oh, yeah, there is. So later on, I got a commission to make it as a much bigger version, and for a Family Fun Music Day at Glasgow City Halls. And actually, so yeah, same way of triggering sound using light sensors, but made it as a kids friendly. And she is actually the highlight of this video, when everyone was trying to figure out how this system was working, and looking at the light beam. But she just found that light sensor on the wall, and she started playing with it. It was like really amazing to see her, and I wonder what she's doing now. Okay. Well, back to my work. So, and then I started working with some contemporary dancers, and I had 1 week residency with them at the dance studio and at Dance Space in Edinburgh, and I used Wii Remote to as an accelerometer to detect their arm motions, and I had this custom armbands. But then I didn't want to ask dancers just to play my sound. I wanted to have active participation in creating sound competition. So I thought I should tell them what my sound competition approach is. So what I did was let them listen to the environment we're surrounded in, because that's the first practice, probably what we do as a sound artist and also musicians. And then they wrote down what kind of sound they could listen, not describing what kind of sound they listened to or object, but they literally wrote down the sound so that they could play with their mouth. So I divided the group into the two. So when one group is performing, the other group was listening to the other group was performing. But actually, this kind of activity helped us to complete the collaboration. And then later on, I started using the game track controllers, and it's a vintage game controller before Kinect was invented. So its motion sensing is very not as clever as Kinect, but I really liked this controller because of its physicality. So basically, the controller has these 2 tethered controllers which players can pull in and out. The reason why I really liked it was as soon as I showed this to my collaborative dancers, they just start playing with it, and I really like that that controller actually invites people to just start playing with it and have some fun. So I was really interested in the way they're playing with the tethered controllers, and the wires are kind of swirling around their body and creates that interesting shapes with the wires. So for me, sound and movement is really for collaboration. So I use it as a communication tool. And then what I didn't want it to do was actually trying to translate movement into sound. So a lot of people kind of misunderstand my approach, because just because I'm using technology and they're just really trying to find like what's the scientific approach behind it, like how did you translate the movement into sound? But I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know how to do it, to be honest. But I just wanted to get inspired by movement, and I wanted to explore the possibility rather than having fixed answers. And I guess we all feel different things from different movements. And I know certain movements we all feel kind of maybe calmer or more energetic. But I just didn't want it to be the one who's giving that answer. I just wanted to have movement and sound as a really way to engage with my collaborator and also have some fun. So I really liked the game track controllers. So I even decided to do my PhD with it. So I created a portfolio of interactive sound and dance collaboration work, and I use the physicality of the controllers to restrict dancers' body, so that it actually challenged the dancers to find the new ways of moving while also they are actively contributing to the sound composition. And of course, I also studied choreographic methods as well. So I really liked the choreographer William Forsythe, and I looked at his approaches, and he really thinks about the kinespheres around our body, and also the dancers often improvise using this mental imagery. So they imagine like imaginary object, and they dance around that object which we cannot really see. So what I wanted to do was creating this physical restriction, visible physical restriction, instead of mental imagery using game track controllers. And I hacked the tethered controllers part so that I could easily attach them anywhere in a room. And the composition I made with my collaborative dancers is not purely improvisational. So improvisation is a method to create or work together. So what we do is first my dancers try out my sound system, and then they also listen to the sound, and then we find really good movement materials. Then we say, oh, let's keep them. And then we do it again, and then we include those good materials, and we think about how we're going to develop that further. So it's a very iterative process, and then in the end, finally, we have a piece together. So I personally, I really liked the piece, The Music Room, I created with my collaborative dancer, because in this piece, I liked that relationship, how the dancer was dealing with her movement and the sound. And the only task I gave her is, once you trigger sound, let the sound to play out until the end. So she didn't want it to trigger too many sound, so she became very careful and slow, and I could feel that the physicality, like she really cares about, and with the sound. So I'm going to play a little bit. Yeah, so I put her even in the corner of the room to even challenge her even more to give very little space to move. Yeah, so again, like the reason why I chose this technology was just really if I have to give, I don't know, if I have to work with my collaborators, I wanted to give them technology which is also meaningful to them, so they can also explore interesting way to move, not just trigger sound and make sound composition. And in the end, what I found is like really I mean also me was challenged to be out of our comfort zone. So if you're interested in, I don't know, academic papers, you can also have a look at my publication. And I started my postdoc for a project called InGAME, which is based in Dundee. And since then, I started using more virtual reality, and I started using Oculus Quest because it can trick hand movement without using any gloves or anything like that. The reason why I decided to use this was because previously, I mean, when you have to use hand tracking stuff for VR, there used to be like this really big chunky gloves and you have to wear, or this normal way of like, controlling games in VR with handheld controllers. I find it quite, disconnecting from our natural physical movement. So when I saw this technology, I was like, yeah, actually, it's kind of very interesting. It's only like little parts of our body in the virtual reality. It still kind of feels a bit more connected to the virtual space. So the first piece I created is called Hot Summer Afternoon. And it's for single player, but I wanted to explore what kind of sound I could create using my hand gestures. So I used the open source machine learning program Wakinator to map my hand movement to the game object in the VR, so which can manipulate the sound parameters. So I'm going to play a little bit. So it detects my hand gesture. So it detects a certain drawing gesture, and then it spawns the game object, depending on what kind of things I drew there in the first section. And then the second part is more like really my hand movements mapped to the object to play the sound synthesis. Yeah, I had urgency to go crazy, like. And then the pandemic started, and it was actually the perfect time to test the social VR stuff. I mean, I liked the first piece. I mean, it was a good study for me, but then it was not really shareable with other people because my programming skills are really bad. My program was like so clunky. It was so hard to share with anyone, and also it was just made for single player. So for the second project, Sound of Light, I really wanted to create as something I could share with anyone who doesn't know anything about music or sound. And I deliberately made it as a non-verbal and anonymous place, so people can participate in the virtual space, but you don't know who that person is because everyone joins with the same style of avatar. Tom tried it, so you know how it was. So the reason why I created was because I was actually quite amazed by the fact that we could actually communicate a lot of things just physically without actually using the verbal language. So I wanted to test that, how much I could actually teach people just with my hand gestures, you know, whether I just wanted to know whether people could grasp that idea I wanted to create in here, just looking at my hand gestures. So it was actually quite challenging. Some people just immediately look at me and, you know, just follow my gesture, and then they figure out how to make sound and stuff, but not everyone was like that, of course. But I really like the challenge. I think it was just a part of the game. That was part of the fun stuff. So I'm going to play a little bit of the documentation of the work. This one was recorded just before actually the avatars and the environment was fully developed, but it's captured a really nice moment, like where I was teaching and improvising, the group improv and stuff. So, yeah. Video goes off. Yeah. So that's all I prepared for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.